So welcome everyone who is here with us on the live call and everyone who will get the chance to tap into this replay a little bit later inside the Empath Leaders community. And this is our series on intuition, really developing your intuition and being able to sort of call it up on demand. And that we don't have to just be sort of passive receivers of information, although we do receive a lot of information as intuitives, but we can actually ask for it. We can actually encourage those kinds of things to be coming through. And our topic today is how to trust yourself implicitly in every situation. And I'll just say that I have not yet mastered that as a disclosure. It is a lifelong practice. But I do recognize that I have come a very long way from a time period in my life when I did not trust myself, when I would receive intuitive nudges, when I could feel something in my body that didn't feel right and I didn't listen. I went ahead and did it anyway. And of course, then, sort of reaped the consequences of that. So this is a really important topic, which is how do we work towards that? How do we work towards understanding that as a highly empathic, intuitive person, that we do know what we're doing, that at some level we always know. And so let's kind of dive into that really and see what's here for us. So as I said, sometimes we make a decision and sometimes that decision works out really well. And we're like, yes, that felt great. I really understood that. I trust myself. But sometimes we've made decisions in our lives which are followed closely by what appear to be negative consequences or are negative consequences. For example, we don't get what we want. We were wanting this thing, but we got something else. Or we went through some kind of pain or suffering as a result of this choice or decision. And we immediately think, I'm not good at making decisions. I'm not good at listening to my intuition. I thought this was what I was supposed to do. I thought this is where I was being directed, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe I misread the message, or maybe I'm not as intuitive as I thought I was. And your inner critic or your inner skeptic, whatever you like to call that part of yourself, begins to chatter and they won't go quiet, right? And then self-doubt creeps in, and that feels really bad and icky for all of us, right? When we have that place where we just can't even trust ourselves, it feels horrible to be in that space. And I was in that space for a very long time in my life. And what I used to do, and I see a lot of intuitives do this as well, is we turn to the intellectual mind, right? So we have, multiple aspects of our mental processing. Intuition is one of them, and intellectual is another. They both serve a role. Neither is better or worse. They just serve different roles. But then we engage this intellectual part of our mind and we spend time trying to figure out what happened. How can I solve this problem? We try a bunch of different things. We say, maybe it's this, maybe it's this, maybe it's this. And we get into the sort of anxiety mode, right? We're trying to figure things out logically. And there's nothing wrong with logic. I love logic. I love philosophy and debate and all those kinds of things. And of course, our society does too. We've been taught that a logic linear approach is what is valuable, right? And you can see this out on the internet. I see this many, many times in some of the personality groups where some people are intuitive and some people are more sensory and do things in a more linear, logical fashion. And a lot of those people will sort of poo-poo intuition, like there's no way to prove that this is going to happen, or there's no way to know that to know what you know. And so I see that, intuition kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. So we turn to this because it's a part of our cultural conditioning. We turn to this because this is maybe ways that we've been able to successfully solve problems in the past. And the intellectual mind is really great at solving things that are simple, easy. They have a single answer. Things that, it's a process that we need to do. It's really great at that, but when things are complex, when we're talking about interpersonal relationships or the unfolding of our sacred work, the intellectual mind can't see all the things that we need to see. So we have to engage this other part of ourselves, right? And a lot of times what we do is we might receive an intuitive nudge that we don't understand. It feels a little radical. It invites us to do something we've never done before. And we go, ooh, I don't know about that. I think I'd really rather choose what I already know. I want to follow this well-worn path. Like I've done it before. It feels safe. It feels secure. I understand how to do it. I understand what to do. That I don't know anything about, right? Because intuition at its core is the realm of mystery. And the way that it works is that one sign or synchronicity or divine download or insight or aha moment, whatever you want to call it, appears. And then we say, okay, I'll follow that. I'll bite on that. And we take one step. And then we wait for the next sign and we take a step. And then we wait for the next and we take a step. And we cannot really always see the end result. We can't really see all the way where we're going. And if we look back at our lives, we realize that a lot of life has been lived this way, right? It may be that you set goals in your life and there were certain things that you achieved exactly how you thought it would be. It's probably likely that there are many, many things that you set a goal for. And either you took a very circuitous route to get there, or you didn't end up there, you ended up somewhere else. And you couldn't have ever predicted that from the very beginning, right? And one of my mentors calls this intuitive living, right? Not just using our intuition occasionally, but always coming from this place. You know, just allowing yourself to read the energy that's in the space right now, take one step, then integrate what happened and ask for the next intuitive nudge, the next, divine download, and then take that next step. And it really requires a lot of faith and a radical level of trust, right? A radical level of trust in yourself, in the universe, God, goddess, source, whatever you want to call that, whatever's bigger for you in your life. And sometimes living like this asks us to make choices that other people do not understand or agree with. So we might even receive criticism for forging our path. So I remember when I told, people in my inner circle and people around me that I was going to become a coach and a mentor for empaths. And because this is not a sort of mainstream understood career, if you will, a lot of people were really skeptical, right? And if we allow that skepticism of others to move us off of what we know is true and right and aligned, we might not ever do it, right? So we might not even be sitting here right now if I had listened to people who said, you can't make a living doing that. That's weird. What if empaths don't exist? I heard all kinds of things, right? And so intuitive living, really trusting ourselves, really understanding that at every moment we know something and we are following what is right and aligned. It requires us to back ourselves, to stand firm in our convictions. And one of the oracle cards that came up today was really relevant to this. It's called the Uncharted Sea, right? Let me make sure I can see this okay. And, we get into this little boat because we feel like it's time to make a change in our lives. And maybe we pack some provisions in there and we set off in whatever direction the wind takes us. But there's this huge depth, right, that we cannot see. It's sort of the unknown, the invisible, if you will. There's creatures down there. There's waves. There's all kinds of things underneath. It's kind of like the analogy of an iceberg where there's only so much you can see above the water, but there's a lot more presence under the water. And this is what is the unknown for us. And it takes a lot of faith, depending on what you're doing in your life and what you're pursuing and what you're interested in, to set off into this boat with just a little lantern, a pelican friend to help you find maybe food or resources. And to say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And, I've been out on a boat in the middle of the ocean multiple times. I had the pleasure of being able to do that a lot as a child. And it can be it can get in your mind that it's really scary out there because you have no control, right? You have no control over whether a storm rolls in or the boat might capsize or what are the creatures that are underneath. And so our mind can go into this place where it begins to ruminate about all the things that could go wrong, right? And this is our ego self, the self that wants to keep us safe. And it's an important part of what we have. But intuitive living really requires us to get into this boat, to have courage, and to say, I'm going to do it. I don't understand it fully right now. I don't know why I feel so compelled to get into the boat. I don't know why it feels important to take this journey right now. I don't know why it feels important to make these changes in my life, but I do know that it feels right. And I'm going to do it. And I'm going to trust that when I need to, I'm going to hit land. I'm going to be able to find my way. I'm going to meet other ships on the way. I'm going to, find the resources that I need. The uncharted sea is really a great deal of what it is that the way that we live as intuitive beings, right? And as I said, it requires a radical level of faith and trust. And following those intuitive nudges can feel a little bit like getting into a boat with no oars and drifting in the cosmic tide. Through the fog, and there are endless directions that you could choose. So which one is the right one for you? And oftentimes in our life, it's not that we have too little choices, although there are many people who have too few choices in this world. I just want to acknowledge that. But oftentimes, just like the Six of Cups, we have too many. There's so many places we could go, so many careers we could pursue, so many different people that we could date. I mean, name your thing. Sometimes the reason that we get overwhelmed, we get paralyzed, is because there are too many choices, right? There are too many choices. And then we realize, I don't know which thing to pick. I don't know what to pick. What if I pick the wrong thing? And that inner skeptic, it starts to crop up again. And we can either be in that energy of, I have too many choices. Why are there so many? It would just be simpler if life was black and white, if it was this or that, if I just had to pick this thing. Or we could say, I'm really grateful for the abundance of choices, resources, opportunities that are coming up right now. And I know amongst all of these things, there are one or two or three that are really right for me. And there may be some others that are kind of interesting, that spark my curiosity, but they're not quite aligned. It's not the path. And that's okay. I get to sort them out. I get to see this richness of possible experience, all these different timelines that I could go down. Isn't that great that this is opening up for me? And I don't need to make that decision right at this moment. Okay. So the next card that came out was the Hanged Man, right? The Hanged Man. So this would be us upright when we're like, okay, I can see the vision. I know what I'm doing. Here's where I'm going. When we have the Hanged Man, it's an invitation to say, I need to switch my perspective. I need to look at this a different way. I need to pause. Okay, so HSPs and empaths have a built-in, more active pause to check system. It's called the behavioral inhibition system. And it causes us to pause, to slow down, to take our time, to look at all of the different aspects of these choices and opportunities that we have, and to see which thing we feel is best for us, to look at them from different angles, right? And at some point, we do have to make a choice. We just have to say, I'm going to take the lead. I'm going to pick this thing and at least go a little bit farther down the path with that to see what happens, right? And part of that is really inviting that voice of the self-doubt, of the self-critic, of the inner perfectionist to say, I understand you want to know everything, but we can't right now. So we need to pick the thing that feels best. We need to go a little bit down that road. We need to see where it's going to take us. And you know what? If we don't like that, we can always stop and come back. We can always choose something else. And that is a really empowering thing that has helped me greatly in my life, is to understand I don't have to make any decision permanently. Right? So if I get down there and I'm like, well, it looked good on paper, but in reality, this isn't working out the way I thought it was going to work out. I'm going to make a pivot here. And I'm going to go back to these Six of Cups and say, I like this other cup a little bit better. And I wouldn't have known that had I not gone down that road. So we think when we go down that road and it's not for us that we've failed. We haven't failed. We came here to have experiences, right? We came here to have experiences. And some of those experiences are going to feel really great. And some of those experiences are going to look good on the surface. And then you get into it, it's like, nope, that didn't work. And that doesn't mean there's anything going wrong. So when that part of yourself starts to crop up, that self-doubt, we can say, I didn't do anything wrong by choosing that experience, by seeing what was there. What I did right, though, is when I realized it wasn't the right thing for me, I changed and I shifted and I moved away and I picked something else. So it's important for us to give ourselves credit for what we have done, right? Because there's no way that we can possibly know exactly how anything will work out. We don't know exactly how any job will work out, or running a business will work out, or any particular relationship will work out, or any place that we move to will work out. We just don't know. We just don't know until we do it, till we go there, till we see, till we experience it a little bit. And then we have a very distinct knowing, right? So we're in this boat, we're on the uncharted sea, we pick a path, we pick a star, we say, okay, I'm going to navigate by that. I'm going to go down this road. I'm going to get to a piece of land. The fog kind of lifts. You step out of the boat, you walk around, you're like, is this the right place for me? Do I feel at home here? Is this a good thing, right? And even if that isn't the right thing, you can get back in the boat and you can go to a different place, because there's always the chance to do something different. And we repeat this cycle over and over and over. We receive a knowing, we get in the boat, we have faith, we take off into the wilderness. We find something that we think that we want, we think that is aligned, we experience it, and either it's fully aligned and we continue that way, or we pivot and we go somewhere else. And this happens over and over and over, right? And for a long period in our life, and I'm just really speaking about myself, I didn't realize that this was a repetitive cycle. I didn't realize, oh, there's actually a rhythm to this. But later I began to realize that every time I repeat this process, every time I repeat this process of trusting an intuitive nudge and going down that road a little bit to see what happens, that I'm seeing it happening more quickly, right? My capacity to surrender into the process gets better and better. You know, I used to be extremely resistant to change, to listening to myself, to feeling into what was good for me. And now I'm so much better at it. You probably are too. And I don't mean that we're just going to be passive and not take action on your behalf. Surrender is an active process, saying, I cannot possibly see the end result of everything I'm going to choose. So all I can do is be present to what's happening right now. I can be using my discernment to say, is this right for me in this moment? Right? And I'm going to make a choice and accept everything that that choice will bring. And as we continue to practice this active surrender, the skeptical voice inside the head will lessen, right? Because you've been through this before many, many times. You've tried something new many, many times. You've gone down that road a little ways many, many times. You know what's right for you, what's not right for you. You know how this works, right? And we cease to feel powerless and we embody our roles as co-creators. So it's not that I just have to accept everything that comes to me, right? That would be kind of like the Six of Cups. Okay, I'll just take all of this stuff and just give me whatever. No, you have a very specific idea in your mind of what will work, of what you want, what kind of life you want, what kind of sacred work you want to do, how you want to show up in the world, who you want to be in your inner circle. You have very specific ideas. And then you release exactly how those things will show up. And you begin to ask yourself, what if I always know what I'm doing, at least at some level, even if it's a subconscious level, right? We're growing to become more and more conscious of what we're doing. But what if you've always known what you're doing? What if you've always been drawn to the things that are for you? And what if you've always been not drawn to the things that aren't for you? That doesn't mean that sometimes we didn't stay with something that's not for us longer than maybe we would have liked to. But we knew at some level what was for us and what was not. And what if you're becoming masterful at following this thread of following one sign, which leads you to something else, which leads you to another resource, which leads you to have a conversation with a person, which opens up the door to find this book that changes your life? I mean, what if you're becoming masterful at following that intuitive thread? And what if exactly the right people and the right resources appear every time that you need them? Maybe it doesn't look quite how your intellectual mind imagines, because your intellectual mind wants to work it all out, wants to have a plan, wants to have all the pieces and the outcome all there. But if you look back on anything that you've wanted in your life, that you pursued in your life, any choices that you've made, any changes that you've made, when you got to the final outcome, it was the right thing for you. How you did it may have looked different than what you imagined, but you received what you needed. And what if you no longer have to explain yourself or justify your decisions to others? And this is a big one for HSPs and empaths, because we can feel what other people feel. So if people are feeling disappointment in us, or anger, or resentment, or skepticism, like we feel that sometimes. We feel that inside of our heart, inside of our body, and it feels uncomfortable. So we want to make that right. But it's okay to have that discomfort, because when we remind ourselves that another person is not living my life, another person isn't going to bear the consequences of my choices, another person isn't going to bear the rewards of my choices, then that begins to get us into freedom, right? This is what we're looking for, is a freedom to be in balance, right? So we have both the full moon and we have the new moon, right? So the darkness, the light, the outward energy when we're taking action, when we're pursuing something, when we have an active goal, and the time when we're going within and we're really magnetizing things to ourselves and we're self-reflective. You know, this is what we're going for here. And there's a freedom in letting go of other people's opinions about the path that you're choosing, letting go of that critic and that inner voice that says you're not doing the right thing. And your response to that is, yes, I am. At some level, I am. I may not know all of it. I may have more things to learn, but at some level, I understand what is right for me. And this begins to set up a resonance of self-trust, of self-belief, of knowing that you know how to follow that thread. And I have these beautiful mantras sometimes that I tell myself, which is, I am highly intuitive. And I know, right? I know. And I'm going to replace fear about the unknown with curiosity. And my body knows what is right for me, and I can ask it at any time. The other day, I had a doctor that prescribed me a particular medication, and I asked my body, do you want to fill this prescription? Is this the right thing to put inside me? And the answer was no. So I didn't. That takes a lot of courage to do things like that. There was another medication that said yes to. So, you know, the body knows. The body knows what it should be eating. The body knows when it should be sleeping. The body knows when you need to rest and when you need to be active. The body knows how to move to keep it healthy. The body knows so many things. The body knows and it can feel when a person is safe and when a person is not safe. And you can ask at any time. And my heart knows. Right. So when I get into my head and the inner skeptic is going and, you know, the logical mind's trying to figure all this out and trying to get the whole process and the outcome all lined out for me as I think it's supposed to happen, I can drop down into my heart and I can ask, what is the next step? What really lights me up here? What do I know about this? And I can come into that heart energy at any time. And my breath knows. We talked about this in our last session. When I slow down my breath, when I fill my body, my lungs, my belly with life-giving oxygen, when I just take time to slow down and breathe, I can listen. I can listen to those intuitive nudges. I can see a vision. I can hear a sound. I can smell, a smell, whatever way that you receive that. Your breath knows, right? This is the rhythm of life. You're taking in that life and you're expelling out anything that doesn't work and your body doesn't need. So your breath understands this cycle, this process of discernment. And your feet know. If you have a decision, you can stand there and you can say, okay, feet, do I go right? Do I go left? Do I go straight ahead? Do I back up? And let them move and show you. And this starts to train your mind that there is nothing to figure out. That everything is flowing towards you all the time. And it is our both responsibility and immense gift as highly intuitive people to receive all of that, to bring that in, to say, yes, wow, look at that insight. Someone was talking to me, a client was talking to me yesterday about, having sort of a leveling up where they could feel that something fundamentally changed within their energy, their mentality. And I told her, I said, the longer that you do this process of intuitive living, of following what really resonates for you, the more that will happen, even on a daily basis. You will be leveling up. You will understand so much more about what is right for you and what is not. One mantra I use is, I can stretch time, even when there's a deadline. If I don't know what the right decision is, I can stretch time. I can say, I'm going to sit in this position and I'm going to wait until I know. And it never fails that I always get the answer that I need before I have to tell someone else. Because I can stretch time. And I can release that anxiety that I have to tell someone right now. Our society seems to value like rapid decision making. Be certain, tell us this, tell us that. But what happens, and we see this happening over and over, is a lot of the decisions that are made on that short-term, quick basis, just so that you look like you know what you're doing, don't actually turn out to be very well for most people involved. But when we take our time, when we slow down, when we breathe, when we go into our heart space, when we ask our body, when we actually contemplate all of the different aspects of it and weigh the benefits and the detractions, we make a better decision. So you can stretch time, even when there's a deadline. And you possess a strong sense of discernment. You know about things. You know about people. You know when you're in that job interview, whether that's the right thing for you. You probably know within the first few minutes of being in that job interview. Or there'll be a moment when something comes up and you're like, oop, that's not for me. Listen to that. Also listen to it when it's like, yes, this feels great. I feel joyous. This is the way. This is exactly what I want to be doing. And you are led to the right people, the right opportunities, the right resources at the right time. Part of the intellectual mind's difficulty is that it wants it all to happen right now. And so when we're in the uncharted sea, when we're in this boat, we want to see land immediately, but it's a journey. It's a process. And the more that we can accept that the timing may not be exactly what we think it will be. The form of what it is we desire may not be exactly what we thought it would be. Even the process to get there may not be exactly what we thought it would be. Instead of fearing that, instead of clenching up, instead of being rigid, we can relax. We could enjoy it. We can find something to enjoy right now in this moment, even though I don't have this thing that I want. And we could actually laugh a little bit at the process, enjoy what it looks like, not take ourselves so seriously. Start to believe that life is happening for me. Life is happening for you, not against you. And affirming that intuition is one of your strongest gifts, and that you know how to use it wisely.